Imagine being carried into the deadliest battlefield in Viking history on a shield held above your own men's shoulders. You cannot stand, you cannot run, and yet every warrior around you is more afraid of you than of the enemy in front of them. That was Ivar. But the real answer to why he terrified an entire continent is far stranger than any curse. You have heard the legend, a man with no bones, a body that bent instead of broke. Some sagas claim his mother's blood carried a curse, cast the night he was conceived, weakening his legs before he ever took a breath. Other stories say something colder, that his legs simply failed him, and instead of hiding it, he turned it into myth. Either version tells you something true about how fear actually works. It rarely comes from strength alone. It comes from the unknown. Your brain is wired to fear what it cannot predict. Psychologists call this ambiguity aversion. Researcher Craig Fox, working with Amos Tversky in the 1990s, found that people consistently fear uncertain threats more than clearly defined ones, even when the clear threat is objectively worse. A soldier who charges you is a known danger. A commander who sits still, smiles, and somehow still wins is something your mind cannot file away so easily. Ivar understood this instinctively, centuries before anyone had a name for it. Here is the part almost nobody tells you. Ivar was not the strongest son of Ragnar Lothbrok. He was not even the most famous warrior among his brothers. What he was patient. And patience, in the 9th century, was a weapon almost nobody else knew how to use. When word reached Ivar and his brothers that King Ila of Northumbria had executed their father in a pit of serpents, the sagas say his brothers screamed for blood immediately. Ivar did not. He asked one question: how much gold does Ila have, and how many ships will it take to end him? That single line tells you everything about how he thought. Rage burns fast and dies. Calculation lasts. By the year 865, Ivar had helped assemble what historians now call the Great Heathen Army, the largest coordinated Norse invasion force England had ever seen. This was not a raiding party looking for quick plunder. This was closer to an occupation. Bioarchaeologist Kat Jarman, studying a mass grave at Repton linked to this exact army, found bodies buried with weapons, wealth, and even foreign artifacts traded from as far as Afghanistan. This was not a band of desperate outsiders. This was a mobile, organized, and disturbingly wealthy war machine. Think about what that means for a moment. An army that could stay in hostile territory for years. An army with supply lines, alliances, and enough gold flowing through it to import goods from the other side of the known world. Ivar was not just fighting a war. He was running a campaign that modern military historians still study for its logistics alone. Here is your first takeaway. Fear built on mystery outlasts fear built on force. If people cannot predict you, they will always assume the worst version of you, and that assumption will do half your work before you ever act. That fear only grew after York fell. Then Northumbria collapsed behind it. When Ella himself was finally captured, later sagas describe a punishment so brutal it became almost mythical on its own. A mutilation shaped like spread wings carved into his back. A death meant to be witnessed and remembered rather than simply survived. Historians still debate how literally to take this account. Neil Price, in his research on Viking mentality and ritual violence, argues that whether or not the exact act happened as described, the story itself functioned as propaganda, a warning broadcast across every kingdom that dared resist. And that brings you to the second truth about Ivar. He did not just want victory. He wanted the story of his victory to travel faster than his ships could. You do this too, in smaller ways, every single day. You have chosen a strong opening line for a message specifically because you wanted the reaction to spread before the full context ever arrived. You have let a rumor about your own reputation work in your favor instead of correcting it. Reputation, even now, moves faster than truth. Ivar simply understood this 1,000 years before social media gave it a name. But here is where the story stops being simple. For all his calculation, Ivar's own ending refuses to resolve neatly. Some sagas say he died an old man in England, quietly, in his own bed. A strange and almost peaceful end for a man whose name was built on carnage. Other accounts have him vanishing from records entirely. His death never confirmed. His final years a blank space historians still argue over. This is the third thing worth sitting with. Even total control over your reputation cannot guarantee control over your ending. Ivar spent a lifetime shaping how the world saw him, and still, 13 centuries later, we cannot even agree on how he died. Power over your story only stretches so far. Eventually, the story belongs to everyone who retells it, not to you. So was Ivar cursed? Was he simply a brilliant strategist wrapped in myth to make him more frightening than he needed to be? Or was he something rarer, a man who understood that the human mind fears an unanswered question far more than an answered threat? Every time you meet someone whose calm unsettles you more than someone else's anger, some part of your brain is running the same ancient calculation the Northumbrians ran when Ivar's army appeared on their coast. You are not afraid of what you can see clearly. You are afraid of what you cannot finish predicting. Ivar could not stand on his own legs, and somehow that was never the reason kings fell. Ask yourself what you assume about someone the moment they refuse to give you the reaction you expected. That question is the same one Northumbria never answered in time.